After almost 2 months of intense ground fighting, quiet settled over Israel's northern border for 5 hours. This is Hanan Lishinsky. Welcome to another All Israel News update, where this time we'll go deep into the ceasefire that has been declared in northern Israel between Hezbollah and the IDF forces. So the long-awaited ceasefire went into effect today in the morning around 4 a.m. The guns were quiet. However, they were only quiet for several hours, and just in the last minutes, in the last hour more or less, there have been numerous concerning reports of renewed fighting, of renewed firefights between Israeli forces and Hezbollah operatives in southern Lebanon. So we'll get to that later on in the video, but first we'll go into the ceasefire itself and the terms that were set for it. After several months of negotiations led by the US White House envoy Amos Hochstein, as well as some help in mediating by France, which maintains very close connections to its former colony or colonial entity in Lebanon, finally the ceasefire was agreed upon yesterday evening, with the Israeli cabinet voting 10-1 in favor of the ceasefire. Now, the terms of the ceasefire, as far as we know, I think not all of the details have been revealed yet, but what we can say for now is that this ceasefire will begin with a 60-day period, and this isn't some kind of transitory period, but this is just the start of a what is meant to be a permanent ceasefire. The 60-day period is meant for the IDF to gradually withdraw its forces from southern Lebanon. Even in the last few days, the IDF has kept advancing relatively deep into southern Lebanon and has reached some positions around 10 kilometers within Lebanese territory. But most of the IDF positions are still in the what is called the first line of villages across the border, so 3-4 kilometers into Lebanese territory. So the IDF will have 60 days to withdraw from these positions gradually in stages, while at the same time the agreement stipulates that the Lebanese armed forces, so the Lebanese state's official army that is being supported by the US, for example, has received much funding and equipment from the US. So this force will then deploy throughout southern Lebanon and reestablish, as they hope, the state's sovereignty over southern Lebanon, which has not been present over the past 10-20 years, as Hezbollah has really controlled the southern portion of Lebanon. So the IDF will withdraw, the Lebanese armed forces will deploy throughout southern Lebanon, and all of this will be assisted, it is hoped, by UNIFIL, which until now really hasn't done much at all. But again, this UN peacekeeping force is expected to help the Lebanese armed forces deploy and control in the future and help to prevent in the future that Hezbollah doesn't return to southern Lebanon, doesn't rearm throughout Lebanon and especially in the south, and doesn't rebuild all of the infrastructure that the IDF has painstakingly taken apart and dismantled in the last months of fighting. Now, two crucial points about all of this mechanism that has been agreed. The negotiations on the Lebanese side were led by the Lebanese parliament speaker, who, like Hezbollah, is a Shia Muslim, and he has been really Hezbollah's representative in these talks. So there was no direct involvement of Hezbollah, and to this, until now, to this day, so Wednesday, shortly around noon local time, there has been no official Hezbollah confirmation, no official statement or commitment to this agreement. It is still being, all of the sides really are expecting that Hezbollah will honor this agreement. The parliament speaker has been authorized on Hezbollah's behalf, but we will have to see how much Hezbollah really is committed to the details of this agreement, if they will really evacuate southern Lebanon, pull out all of their operatives, many of whom live there, of course. They are from southern Lebanon, and we will see if they will evacuate and also pull out their rockets, their equipment, and so on. The other very important point to mention here is that the agreement itself is based on the UN Resolution 1701. We have a detailed explainer about this resolution then you could click here, the link, and you can read the story that we wrote a couple of months back. But this really is the basis of the agreement, and this has already failed, so this wouldn't have been enough to convince Israel to agree to this deal. What made Israel agree to this deal, or one of the main points, was a side letter, a side agreement between Israel and the United States, so with no direct connection to Lebanon, that guarantees that Israel will be able to enforce violations if they occur, and will be able to militarily act, strike any of those violations. For example, if Hezbollah returns to southern Lebanon, tries to smuggle weapons into southern Lebanon, or really anywhere in Lebanon, tries again to smuggle missiles, for example, from Syria to Lebanon, Israel will be guaranteed the right to strike. Now, there's a crucial point here that we really don't know about. We really don't know the exact details of this agreement between the US and Israel. From the Lebanese side, it has been claimed that this agreement is not relevant for Lebanon, and Lebanon will not accept it. However, now Netanyahu has claimed that the US gave him the freedom to act, while on the other hand, Biden has said that this freedom still is suspect to a control mechanism that will enforce the agreement. So the US position seems to be that Israel will be able, when it sees violations, to report to this control mechanism, which will be staffed by several countries, US, France, and some others. And then this control mechanism will activate, this committee rather, will activate Lebanese forces and will activate the UNIFIL. And if all of that doesn't work, then Israel will be able maybe to strike. However, on the Israeli side, the understanding of this really is that Israel will have freedom of action to strike in Lebanon if it sees anything that endangers Israeli security. So watch out for this. This is a crucial point in this whole agreement. And the first case, of course, where this agreement will really be tested is when Hezbollah, as everyone really expects, will return to smuggle missiles from Syria to Lebanon, and the Israeli reaction to this first incident will be crucial to see if this agreement really will last for a long time, or if this is just a truce, maybe for several months, 1 or 2 years, until Israel really has the time and the resources to deal with this permanent danger that is still present in Lebanon, as Hezbollah has not been dismantled. Maybe their leadership has been hit, but the organization itself continues to exist and will continue to endanger Israeli residents in the future as well. Now, having mentioned that, the real test of this agreement will come with the big weapons shipments and all of these big moves, at the moment, right now, this agreement is being tested, as I alluded to earlier. We have numerous reports. Army Radio, Israel's Army Radio has compiled a list of 4 to 5 incidents in the last couple of hours where we saw that Hezbollah operatives, in some cases enmeshed in civilian masses, civilian groups, have started to return to southern Lebanon and have been approaching IDF positions on the border, really. So as I mentioned earlier, the IDF positions are mostly just 3, 4, 5 kilometers inside Lebanese territory. So we have already had instances where the IDF has opened fire. Machine guns and artillery apparently have already been used to keep away some civilians from returning to these Lebanese villages, but also, and this has been confirmed by the Defense Ministry and by the IDF, there were already incidents of Hezbollah terrorists approaching IDF forces in the field, and they were fired upon. Again, as I said, Army Radio even has a report that IDF soldiers hit some of the suspects. We don't know what happened, if they died yet. Go on allisrael.com throughout the day and we will keep you informed about the further developments. But as I said, this is the real test. This is the real test of this agreement. We will see whether the IDF really continues to enforce the agreement by force, and if the Israeli leadership is really willing to if it has to, scrap the whole deal and go back on the attack. And in this way, we will see Hezbollah is testing the resolve of Israel's leadership and its army, and we will see where this will lead in the coming hours, possibly. But for now, the ceasefire continues to hold. Now, summing up, I think there are two larger points that I will just get into quickly. One of them is that a major part of the Israeli motivation for this agreement, as has been laid out by Prime Minister Netanyahu in his speech yesterday, is the threat from Iran, the overarching, the looming threat from Iran that, according to Netanyahu, was one of the reasons that the IDF wants to close down this front, wants to end the active fighting in northern Lebanon in order to be able to pull back some troops, to give the troops a rest, to restock the weapon supplies. Some of them apparently again or still have been stopped in the US, and it appears that the US has put significant pressure on Israel to agree to the ceasefire in order to get back the weapons. And these weapons, this equipment, the Israeli leadership is convinced are needed for the continued confrontation with the Iranian regime. And in this context, it's also important to notice, of course, that Hezbollah will not agree to any agreement, will not sign any deal without the explicit go-ahead from Iran. So seen in this light, this agreement really is an agreement between Israel and Iran that for the moment, this Lebanon business will be put on hold. Both sides are not interested in continuing this fighting and maybe want to gain a breather before going into the next round. And this Iran connection with Lebanon, of course, is something to keep an eye out for. Now, the second point touches on Hezbollah's future within Lebanon. This whole conflict, and especially the series of brutal strikes on Hezbollah's leadership, especially the pager explosions, 2 days of mysterious explosions across Lebanon, as well as the numerous airstrikes that killed most of Hezbollah's leadership, have really undermined Hezbollah's standing within Lebanon. What was once seen as a large, well-equipped, well-organized also terror group with large funding from Iran has now been shown as weak, as leaderless, and this has, as I said, undermined Hezbollah's position within Lebanon. It has provided the other forces within Lebanon the opportunity to take it down, and it remains to be seen whether this agreement will give Hezbollah the breather, the space it needs to really restore itself, restore its power within Lebanon, or if the Lebanese forces, for example, the Christians, the Druze, and the Sunni Muslims, can use this opportunity created by an enemy they hate, by Israel, to get rid of Hezbollah once and for all. Now, I have to say I'm not very optimistic. It seems this agreement comes too early. Hezbollah can reorganize and restock its weapon supplies, and at least within Lebanon, looks as if it will continue to be one of the largest forces, if not, again, the dominant power in this failed state for the next couple of years. Israel's leadership for the moment chose not to exploit this opportunity to destroy Hezbollah once and for all. The Israeli leadership, especially also the IDF, seems not to have been intent on continuing this fighting until the point where where Hezbollah, would be destroyed, because this would have required much more forces entering Lebanon and much longer times where the reservists, who are exhausted, by the way, would have continued to be deployed in Lebanon. Instead, the Israeli leadership apparently decided that it was enough to destroy Hezbollah to this point as to have deprived the Iranian regime of maybe its most important, its most dangerous weapon against Israel. So now Israel can enter the next round of the fight against Iran with Iran's main weapon being destroyed. This seems to be the strategic calculus at the moment. But as I mentioned earlier, this ceasefire is already on very shaky legs. The next hours will be crucial to see whether the ceasefire holds for at least a couple of more months. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the real test will come on whether Israel can enforce this agreement militarily and what the international reactions to all of this will be. Very interesting times here in Israel. Remember, the war in Gaza continues as well. The hostages are not yet home. And we will continue to report on all of this, update you guys. And thank you for joining us again for this update. Please leave a like. And if you want, continue to follow us here on our YouTube channel and all the other social media channels.